Now.
Hi,
Hey everyone, it is Smart Brown Girl with Dr. Nicole Carter,
Dr. Danisha Blake.
and we are describing thick today.
We still in it. We still in the thick of it.
And it's okay. I'm mad at you today. I have to stop for a second. Like,
I was like the delay reaction. It's
so
okay.
today we're discussing Know Your Whites,
hmm
and we are discussing Black
Black.
is Over or Special Black.
hmm
So I am excited to get into this. So
Me
let's
too.
go.
Yes,
You
yes,
want to
yes.
start?
Yes. So, know your whites in general, I guess, just a broad overview, because I feel like some of the questions just kind of jump right in. So knowing your whites is basically kind of just her analysis of whiteness and the elasticity of it. And she uses the Obama and Trump presidencies or the election of both to describe how whiteness is elastic. So we are talking about the first question, which is, have you been or have you seen or experienced opportunity hoarding function in ways other than described by the author? And to what extent does opportunity hoarding function to shape ideas about Black incompetence? Hmm. Um, so in the chapter, she really is talking about how um, like opportunity hoarding in white communities, where like white folks are like doing things like moving into certain communities and influencing policies, influencing really the whole construction of like the neighborhood, how the schools run, um, and trying to um, hoard power in order to create outcomes. So that's how she's talking about it. And I think on page, oh Lord, on page,
No, oh Lord.
right. I thought I had it. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't. Um, you know. Oh yes. Coalescing around their shared interest. Um, but no, I cannot find it in here. So you can go ahead and talk so we don't have to.
Okay. So, I in the syllabus I
Oh,
pointed out. Well, from the book, I'm sorry. I pointed out page 105.
yeah, that's where I was at.
Um,
hmm
yeah. So I think we had probably the same idea
Yep.
about what
So,
she was
so on
talking
105,
about. Yeah.
she white parents use their economic privilege to purchase homes in communities that have benefited from generations of wealth. That wealth privilege generates investment into streets, sidewalks, green space, traffic lights, clean air, proper waste management, and safe drinking water.
Yeah.
So it just goes on. It describes what this actually looks like.
Yeah. And so my example of this for me was, well, any type of gentrification that takes place in different cities and urban spaces, but specifically, like for me, recalling what it was like. Well, even like if you, there was an article that I saw when I was looking up more information um, about sorry, opportunity hoarding, and it was talking about Detroit
Mm,
and who downtown Detroit is for. And
mm,
so, like,
mm,
for the longest when I was growing up, it was a mess. Like, it was not, people did not invest in that area. And then everything started to be built up with like Quicken
mhm.
Loans and all these other companies. And then the CEO of Quicken Loans started buying up all these properties. And they talk about Detroit, and I feel like white folks capitalize off of like the history of Detroit, the rich, like, like Motown is the Motor
Yeah.
City, the tigers, like all these different things, but
The
it's
shop.
not for those who created that history, right? Like it's not for, like the majority of the people living in the city. So I see that as like they have built up these spaces for themselves. So it's an opportunity and they're hoarding that opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah. I don't have examples of like what it would look like in other ways.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, to me, I think that is like, so she talked about schooling. She talked about like the neighborhoods and things like that. And I guess we could say businesses and things like opportunities that would come about in spaces, but I really do see it happening in spaces that used to be occupied by more marginalized folks, and then white folks come and take it over.
Right.
So, and then they do everything that they weren't willing to do for it when, I don't know, their child wasn't living there or something. So,
and I guess to that second question, like when Black folks are pushed out of their own communities or communities that they've historically lived in, it's like they're made to blame. Like, well, if you had kept your neighborhood up, or if you had have done these, set things, then somehow you would have, been able to keep your neighborhood, or it wouldn't have gone bad or anything like that. Where it's like, well, if opportunities and jobs are moving out of the community, right, and there are opportunities for Black people to thrive in those communities, then that's the reason. But it's always the Black folks or the marginal community that's to blame for the way that the outcome of opportunity hoarding or gentrification in this example.
And I think that, like that goes into the second part of the question about the Black incompetence and how it connects, because it makes it seem like you can do something to actually like transform these things, or that you can like do something to actually reach this status. And actually so many of us try. But at the end of the day, like it's still like we still don't get like the respect. We're still not seen as like competent. Like somehow we had to get here, like in some other type of way, right? And so it's like minimizing the reality of things and saying it's kind of like the bootstraps, like So yeah, I keep thinking right now, thinking of this, and even the description of that neighborhood that she kept talking about with the Obama party.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about them. I don't know if you watched
yeah,
that
I saw the first episode, and oh my God, I just remember like I didn't even finish it, which is too much, but
it's a lot. It's a lot.
That
So if anybody is not familiar with them, maybe like check it out.
It's on Amazon.
It's a lot, though. It is a lot. It's similar to Lovecraft Country, but less on the. I feel like less on the sci-fi than but more on the gory.
Okay. Somebody was like, it's like the bootleg. Somebody said it's like a bootleg Us, and I was like,
yes, it's like Us. Yes, it's like Us.
It's so ironic that it's called them, and I thought, but yeah, just like their whole interaction with like them moving into the neighborhood and just like setting up shop and just trying, to push them out and find any way. Because I remember that was on Lovecraft Country where like they put that brick on the horn and moved into that house. So
yeah. So like it's only something that's attainable to certain people, and even when you have like financially have the ability to attain,
Yeah.
like housing in different areas and to move up in a
Mhm.
quality education. Like, yeah, that people are like, yeah, but this is not your space. Like, get
Yeah.
out,
Yep.
literally, get out.
And the thing
Uh,
is, it's like in those like examples, they were very overt in their like attempts to get them out. But like on page 108, she says, and these perfectly civil people live in intentionally cultivated, nominally diverse in-town panopticons that need no guard in the central watchtower but whiteness. And like whiteness doesn't have to like show up as these like in like aggressive overt actions to move or push someone out. It's just like in the way, in the culture, or just in the way like people make little comments, or somebody's mowing their lawn at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're supposed to know that that's your cue to mow your lawn. Like all of these things are like examples of how you see whiteness playing out to function as a policing tool for anybody who isn't white, but
mhm.
but for white people, right? Or for to maintain an idea of whiteness, but for anybody who's going to come close to it, it is their memo,
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
so the next
Um,
question, you wanna move on?
hmm.
I said you want to move on to the next question.
Yeah, so it talks about the definition of whiteness
Mhm.
that is listed on page 112, and it's actually like a lot about whiteness on that page. So,
Mhm.
but it says, how does the author define whiteness? And
Mhm.
so the way that I interpreted everything that she said is basically whiteness only exists if blackness exists.
Mhm.
And so blackness was constructed, therefore whiteness doesn't exist,
Right.
except to like basically counter everything that is blackness.
Yeah.
So and so I pointed out that she mentioned that it was elastic and so it can
Mhm.
move, it can change. But
Right.
then when it comes to blackness, when
It's,
you say like there's so much which goes into the next chapter or essay, but so
mhm.
much that is blackness, what it means to be black, but like we can't accept, like people don't accept that. But
Mhm.
whiteness can be whatever it wants to be
Right.
at any moment and can
Mhm.
be constructed to be whatever it wants to be at
Right.
any moment.
Anybody can be, pulled into a concept of whiteness, um, you know, in order for whiteness to sustain its position of power.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this one. Whiteness, the idea, the identity tethered to no nation of origin, no place, no gods, is this only if it can expand enough to defend its position over every other group that challenges the throne. White is being European until it needs to be to also be Irish because of the Polish who can eventually be white if it means that Koreans cannot. For that situational dominance to reproduce itself, there must be a steady pole. So, yeah,
Yeah.
which is blackness in this case.
Yeah. And if you look at the history of race and the construction of race,
Mhm.
particularly in the United States, like that is exactly what happened. Whiteness came to be because blackness came to be.
Mhm.
And because you had to figure out a reason why a group of people were to be
Mhm.
subjugated. And so that was your reason.
Right.
And so then, therefore, this idea of whiteness came about
Mhm.
because they needed to differentiate themselves from everything that is
Right.
black. So
Yeah.
Rashida said, "Critical race theory enters the chat." Yes,
I mean,
critical
the
race theory
first,
is everywhere. No,
I know that, except for Florida, but even when it opens up that epigraph about the origins of property rights in the United States are rooted in racial domination. So even in the early years of the country, it was not the concept of race alone that operated to oppress Blacks and Indians, Rather, it was the interaction between conceptions of race and property that played a critical role in establishing and maintaining racial and economic subordination. That was from Cheryl I. Harris, Whiteness as Property. So, it's not just about setting it up for the sake of setting it. It's about sort of hoarding power, right? Hoarding opportunities, hoarding property, and wealth. It is why the construction of race is what it is, and it can move and be elastic to serve that. Yeah. Okay. So there's a quote from page 114. It's the eternally future-looking American story is about a tomorrow that is disconnected from yesterday, precisely because the story of the nation does not come off particularly well in that retelling. But I have come to believe that it did not matter that Obama had faith in white people. They needed only to have faith in him, in his willingness to reflect their ideal selves back to them, to change the world without changing them, to change Blackness for them without being Black to them. And that's on page 114. So how might older generations in your family who are connected to yesterday or the history of the country reconcile this? So do they mean? Oh, go ahead. Do they
So
mean?
I just saw it at so in the quote, she said that basically the future American story is separated from that history. Mm-hmm. But so we're asked to reflect on the connection to that history and what that means. So I interpret it, I guess, like in different ways. So I know just like for my family, well, most of my family, Obama represented freedom for them. Like,
right.
And it wasn't because I feel like for a lot of white folks, it was like safety. It was not threatening. And but for I think a lot of, I don't know, just like my some Black families, I'll just say that it was like finally, like it wasn't here's a biracial person,
right.
It was here's a Black dude, like right. Finally, and so and it was like a sense of redemption,
right? Yeah.
And so I think for like personally, and this was talking about family who are connected to yesterday. So like, but personally, I feel like on the surface that might be true, but the reality is that, and this is just my beliefs, not the beliefs of anyone else, but the reality is that it was a pacifier, right? Like that election was, and it was, I don't know, it was just like a look what we can do.
This is our diversity hire. I mean, it's just the same old tried and true story of, and that's not even the real, to me, it's like also his policies, right? Like we can go back and see how, I mean, she even talks about his imperialistic like administration, was something that, really aligned and really helped to maintain white supremacy. And, so I see that it is not only just the safety, but it also functioned to do things in the name of imperialism, which is even more destructive, I think.
Yeah. So it is well, let me not say that. It is sometimes difficult to talk about this because like so many of us get angry at each other about Obama, right? Yeah. Like I can't talk to my dad I cannot like say like, Dad, now Obama, like I'm happy that you happy that you saw perhaps someone who looked like you in the office, but that was about it. That's where it ended.
Yes.
Right there. So Rashida, is it showing? Yeah, said Obama was able to be white people's black friend that they could claim to prove they were not racist without abolishing white supremacy. Black people thought it was the beginning of the abolishment. Yeah. So we thought it meant different things.
Yeah.
Like I think that day, I remember that day. I remember I was in tears. Like, what? It actually happened. And it's like, Nicole, you don't believe in this stuff now, sis.
Man.
What are we doing? But it was like for that moment.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, I mean, I do think it's worth having a conversation. Maybe I'm saying this because I haven't, but the person who hasn't actually went into that conversation with many Black folks. But yeah, I just also remember, like, even just with like Michelle Obama, and like people love Michelle Obama, and like I remember being really defensive of this, like this, I think she identifies as Latinx, but she was doing a project on how Michelle Obama's like Let's Move campaign was actually, xenophobic, again, and really targeting like Mexican immigrants and things like that. And like there was this whole, like, she constructed this whole argument. And I remember being like, how dare she? When I think about it, I'm like, oh, but like I think that sometimes, like, and maybe we'll talk about this when we talk about Black is Over, but I think that our defense of things that are seemingly anti-Black are oftentimes like, it's hard to reconcile that because you don't want to go into the vein of being like anti-Black, but then the policies don't line up, and the policies are also sometimes anti-Black as well, coming from Black folks. Mm-hmm. And so like then you're like, damn, like I can't get out of this trap.
Yeah.
So
well, it is a trap, but so we got a lot of comments. Mm-hmm. So Rain Diamond said,
needing that
token Black friend. That's what it was. And I mean, that's what Cottom said throughout, this section. We also had Rashida, who said his presidency changed how I viewed imperialism and who was the face of it.
Yeah.
And then again, Rashida, I was 18, first time voting. My mama don't even like him anymore. My dad, though, like I don't know. Like he is just
he's
like, the best thing. And it's like, okay, I'll let you have your day. So but yeah, it's complex. It's and I think that's the best way to describe it, because it can be connected to so many other things. But like the thing, like people don't want us to like call out people when they're like, well, one, the first of anything, right? But then you get another term and you do the same things. Actually, you did worse. So, like, I don't know. So,
because we're like, this is our one, and that's the thing, is we believe that it's like, this is our one shot and we got to do it right. And it's like, why do we have that mindset? Like, this can only be our one chance at having access to power. And when we do, what do we do with it? And if what we do with it doesn't actually reshape the lives of Black folks, or to better the lives of Black folks, then like, was it worth it? Mm-hmm. But
So the next question asks, and it's related to these things as well, but how does the author's use of mundane daily conversations provide a window into broader questions? So I think she's talking about, and she is Dr. Walker, Dara Walker, when she wrote the syllabus. But I think she's referring to the conversations that Cottom had with the people on campus and things like that. Like just the janitor that she didn't know if it was a janitor or not.
Right.
Like, and and how that added to me, how it added to
Mm-hmm.
her arguments in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
I mean,
So,
that part about like a tiger, that tiger bit your ass because he remembered a tiger, like that was, it's that everyday kind of theory that, we get from just having those conversations, and a reminder that knowledge is produced in the mundane, right? In those moments where we think, we just having a chat, but there's an analysis happening there.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
also no elevate it. Like there's
Yeah.
also no need to elevate it. It is a very sharp, to the point analysis of what is happening. You don't have to like bring it up to high theory. It is what it is in that moment.
Yeah. And there were so few words
Right.
stated in
Mm-hmm.
the statements that were made by people that we don't look to as theorists, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't look to as like writers or like people who political analysts and things, but
Yes.
yet they're analyzing everything that's going on.
Yep.
So and I think this goes back to that last question because it's asking us about what basically our folks, like our family members and things like that felt, like how they felt about the situation. And these are people that we would see and we talk to. These are our family.
Right.
Like they're not up here like pontificating about, not saying we're pontificating, I'm talking about like academia, but like pontificating about the political strategy of Obama. Right. And they're just like, okay, look, he gotta win. Let me tell you why he gotta win. Right. So
right.
But he might not win. Okay. Let me tell you why. So but yeah. So to me it just it disrupts that idea of incompetence.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I can read the next one too if you want me to. Okay. Yeah. So, Tressie attends a rally in support of Donald Trump's presidential election. That's from page 122. The question asks, have you ever found yourself in a similar position or intentionally place yourself in said position? Did it challenge or sharpen your understanding? I have not.
Nope.
Anybody in the audience want to share?
Have you done ethnography at a Trump rally or something of the like? We are not the Black Klansmen up in here. We are not trying to, and I don't think that's what she was doing at all. But no, I don't. And I think it's really interesting. I was having a conversation. And sometimes I forget she's a white woman, so she can have those conversations. But like she was talking about how there was a faculty member who is in political science, and he was having us like rant about critical race theory being a threat to American democracy, because if people like push and lean into critical race, then like people are going to be even more like leaning into opposing it and destroying the American democracy. And like, but at the time when he was saying it, it was just like, he was saying it like in a way that was sort of negating critical race theory or whatever. And so she was like, having a conversation and engaging him. And I remember just sitting there and being like, oh, that's real cool. Like that you went and engaged him on that conversation. Cause that's something I just wouldn't even think to do. Cause I would have been like, you wrong. And I'm not about to engage you in that. And so I remember I said something about like, when I drive through the city and there's a whole bunch of like Trump flags and stuff like that, I get really uncomfortable. And one of my coworkers emailed me and was like, I'm surprised that someone like you would say something like that. And shouldn't we be giving everybody a fair shot and not making prejudgments about, but he was like, but I would just like to like hear from you, like why you thought, whatever. And I was like, delete. Actually, I put it in my folder. I have a folder called Ugh. And I just put it in my folder. But I was like, I'm not about to engage and explain myself to you if you don't understand why I, as a Black woman first, I show up as a Black woman at work. I don't show up as the director of diversity and inclusion when I make comments like that. So, and anyway, in general, if you don't understand why I would not feel that way, and you think that I'm always leading with my position, and also that my position should be meant like, I think by virtue, diversity of opinions and ideas, like I am coming from a social justice Black feminist. We not doing all that. And so the idea that like somehow you're supposed to engage with all of these ideas that are harmful because it's a thought exercise, I'm like, I just can't afford to do thought exercises with people whose ideas are killing people who look like me and also just a threat to me in general, right? Like, I don't know what the implications of these things have on me. I do know, but I don't know when they'll show up as, like physical violence. I know it's like psychological trauma and violence in general. So, I'm just like, I wish I could be, that. And I mean, we have conversations offline about why, where we are situated, kind of how we think about it. But I just don't, I just don't think that that's always how I, and that's not where I want to get in my life. So there's some opportunities that I probably won't have, by virtue of me being unwilling to go there. So
yeah. I mean, my thing is like, I think we see enough in the world. We don't have to go somewhere and immerse ourselves in the BS, like when we're surrounded by it every single day. So like, I'm good.
Yeah. But I do think it was interesting that she, recognized that, like, I think her thing was, we expect for these things to, once we see it on TV, we think it's like, like a rally, like people just turn. And she was like, it was super mundane. It was just the same as like the party at the Myers Park, And I thought that was really interesting. There was like, she was presenting to us sort of the way that there's sort of this like this similar multiracial sort of, kind of, contingency event, and yet seemingly there's two kind of representations of like what kind of politics there are. You got Obama and then you got Trump, So
yeah.
Hat knackers.
I don't know what that is. I don't.
I would be terrified to go to the rally and not even interested in hearing more on their thoughts. Interestingly, how she described it as boring, because that's the opposite of what the news show. Oh yeah, that's to that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also that was one particular rally, right? So I mean, we not gonna say that that's like how all of them are.
So the next question asks, it says, this book was published in 2019, just a few years into Trump's presidency. Does the chapter sharpen your thinking on the aftermath of the Trump presidency? If so, how so?
Yeah, because I think that we thought it was a backlash to. Do you see that comment?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that we often think of it as like a backlash to, and I think what she was saying was it's a extension of / a sort of similar to, right, the same way that an Obama president, and I don't think we've had that kind of analysis of how we get from Obama to 45.
Sorry. We had a weird comment, y'all, and so I blocked the comment. So it started the comment over. So I forgot who it was that just left the comment. If you can repost it.
I can still see it though.
Okay, you can still see it? No,
Mhm.
so the person won't be able to comment anymore.
No, I'm talking about I still haven't seen Rashida's comment.
Yeah, Rashida.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I was trying to get rid of that comment. It was
Yeah.
multiple of them. So
Oh,
um
it did start it over. I get what you're saying.
yeah. Um so in sharpening my thinking on the aftermath, I didn't I don't know. Like I feel like it kind of um no, it didn't. I think it's like it made me a little bit more aware of or think differently about like where white folks are who voted for Obama, you
Mhm.
know, and like what happens when they are no longer satisfied with, with something. Um, and so they, you know, then a Trump
That's
presidency occurs. And then after it, Trump
mhm.
presidency creates an opportunity that was already brewing, right? Like, so that was already like coming,
Mhm.
but it justifies, like things that have happened since.
Right.
So,
And I guess the end of the chapter on page 125 helped to kind of like think through about how we might consider the sort of like not necessarily thinking about it as a backlash, but a kind of way of needing to like resist or oppose like, you know, like progress or whatever. So political theorist Corey Robin understands the history of the conservative right in the United States as a search for a fight because the act of being conservative necessitates an undesirable progress against which it can rebel. And so, I think I don't know what that means,
mm-mm.
but so yeah, I think that that being kind of an analysis of how it works, I think that was a newer idea for me. So those are the questions for Know Your.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all, if we look a little confused. There are some like chat responses that are not necessarily relevant to what we're talking about. So, yeah, I just did something else. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. A lot going on here.
Right.
Um,
Sorry for the dead space. We might have to edit out the damn dead space right here, but okay. Um, Black is over or Special Black. So this chapter, Dr. Walker does, I think, provide a sort of a summary, so I can read it. It says, in this chapter, Macmillan Cottom discusses the various stereotypes that have created a hierarchy of Blackness where African Americans who trace their lineage to the US are viewed as incompetent and lazy and well situated at the bottom. She recalls her experience from the time as a graduate student and professor, explaining the moments where strangers assumed that because of their intelligence, she was likely a Black international student. She writes, over the years, I have had strangers try repeatedly to make me over into a kind of Black. That was the Nigerian tennis player I dated for a while. He liked very much to introduce me as the woman getting her PhD. Didn't I have any African in my family? I certainly looked like it, he suggested. And if I did, it would make introducing me all the more better. There was the man in Massachusetts who refused to accept that I was not West African. The basis for his incredulity was the Harvard t-shirt I was wearing while filling up my tank. What are the distinctions that the author makes between Blackness and whiteness in this chapter? So, I mean, I think that in some way we get this understanding. I think it could be easy to read this as Blackness is, because I think her argument is Blackness is not elastic, static, right? And so in some cases, and whiteness is elastic. So how is like people's rendering of her Blackness as a type of special Black, right? How does that kind of connect us back to this notion that like what is whiteness doing in order to construct like these notions of Blackness as sort of like these distinctions between Blackness, right? And how it operates in determining who's more valuable. Like, you know, if you're regular Black or Black, as, you know, she's described me, how does that still serve whiteness in these?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I have a lot of thoughts about this chapter, and reading over this quote, and then just some of the other things that she stated in this idea of the fluidity of whiteness and how it plays a role in our idea of Blackness. For me, it was like, so Blackness or being Black had already been rendered as something that was incompetent. And so because of her stance and her status in academia, there was no way she could be Black. You gotta be something else's.
Right.
I mean, like, you got a PhD, you know, you're successful, you're a successful writer, and professor, right? All these different things. And so you have to add something to it. They got to be different, because you can't just be normal Black. Right. Like, and so that's what I thought of it. Like, so therefore, Black options related to Blackness are only reserved for those who were not transported here since slavery, basically. But or yeah, during slavery.
Right.
But that's what I thought of in that section.
Right. Yeah.
And then the next question, well, it talks about Cottom's relationship to an institution and a critique of it. Well, it reveals the author's relationship to the institution and a critique of it. How might her position enrich her view of the institution? And I think the institution that we're talking about is academia. So,
yeah, and this kind of reminds me of what Patricia Hill Collins argues in some of her earlier work, but then like in Black Feminist Thought, she also brings it back in, which is like that outsider within perspective. So in many cases, like her being this Black academic, there are ways in which she's inside of the academia, she's privileging and benefiting, but yet there are reminders to her that she is still an outsider, right? So when that person, she talks about that senior scholar who tells her, like, you know, in many ways, like, I don't trust you because you make too many white people like you, right? And then he also said, though, that being a dark Black woman would prove a problem for me in academia. And that's on 132. And so, like, those two moments in which he's like, you make, you know, like, essentially too many white people like you, which is like that marking kind of that, like that sort of like status of being an academic and being an academic that makes white people comfortable, but also being like, but you're also a dark-skinned Black woman, and so that's going to pose a problem for you as you navigate. So, which continues, and there's also intersections to that, right? And so,
and we got some comments related to it. So here's one from Rashida. who said she really enjoyed the chapter. Many Black academics seem to be afraid to share the privilege non-Black people of color and other ethnic Blacks have in academia. And then again, I noticed this this as someone going into academic librarianship and see my mom go through as an accounting professor. Younger, less experienced Asian professors getting paid, they get paid more. And again, Rashida with the comments today. Kata mentions ethnic Blacks may start less trouble fighting for more equity, which is something I didn't think about until reading this chapter. Woo! Is that comment on point?
That's a hot take.
Like that is a yes. So I can say so much about this because as a a light-skinned Black person working in academia, I feel like when they hired me thinking that I was safe and I was non-threatening. And then I opened my mouth when I got on campus. And then I took the side of students when I got on campus. And then I advocated for myself when I got on campus. And then I advocated for other people who look like me when I got on campus. And so I was no longer safe. And so I feel like it's like we have a different experience, but it's a similar experience. And maybe so it's probably such a common experience of us all, like Black women in academia. So like,
and the way that leadership oftentimes will put people in place to block your progress or block your whatever. So, you know, when you start to make them too uncomfortable or too much progress is happening, what are the mechanisms, right? When we talk about whiteness being elastic, what are some of the mechanisms that leadership puts in place to then block or to return back to safety or the comfort? So it may not necessarily, so now they don't have to deal with you or anybody who's a problem, as Kadam says, right? But now they get to kind of have that person be a shield so that they don't have to, or at least whatever issues you do bring to the table, it is translated through somebody who's more palatable.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know, there's so much I could say here, but like, and I work with several Asian American women in my department, but also across academic units on campus, and they're often put in positions of power over diversity and inclusion efforts because it is assumed that like they will only go so far to like to your point, like actually succeed with like making changes.
Right.
And I don't know, it's something I'm grappling with right now. So I think this is why this is like such an important chapter for me. But yeah, it's like, and it's always like this dance, like kind of like I'm in this institution. So I acknowledge the power that exists within it and the power of the education that comes from it. But at the same time, I'm within this institution. I acknowledge the history of oppression and discrimination that exists within it as well. And I also acknowledge that I wasn't meant to be here in this space. So it's deep.
It's like, you know, it's a constantly battling, like, what is my role in the institution? Like, if I'm not, you know, I think you can't single-handedly change anything, but if you're not at least trying to push to disrupt just the status quo, then like, you know, is it worth it being there, you know, trying to, you know, create change? But I don't want to, I used to get kind of caught up in like, I'm not radical and like, I'm just, a part of the problem. And it's like, well, we don't live outside of capitalism. So like we have to find ways within it. But also while we're doing that, imagine and create other systems of the world that do look like what we want to do and where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing the constraints of it and not letting that be the thing that makes us like feel defeated in where we are situated.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's like and I think that's and the question I was asked is how might her position enrich her view of the institution? I think that's a question that we all end up asking ourselves at some point.
Yeah.
And really that is also connected to like what is our role here? Like what are we meant to do? Like so my role at my institution is completely different from what I thought it was. My
Right.
calling is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she is at a point, and I can say that I'm probably at a similar point where I I know what my charge is. And as
Mm-hmm.
long as you know what your charge is, it doesn't matter what other
Right.
people gotta say or do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's always going to be things to shake you, but it's about being very clear and being and having some peace around that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
Yeah.
the thing. Do you want a longer
Hmm.
comment or?
Well, that was about the last chapter.
Oh,
The
okay.
last
All
chapter.
right. I didn't read it, so okay.
Um, So the next question asks, how well does she deal with the complexity of the diversity of Blackness?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was an interesting, I think that she points out sort of the, I think it's an acknowledgement. I think she does a good job of acknowledging the diversity of Blackness, but also how that diversity is operationalized to
Mhm.
sort of, perpetuate anti-Blackness, and how Black folks who, like, there was this quote, right, like on page 134, there is some intuitive understanding that Black ethnics have a distinct culture, but they are also captured in the anti-Blackness dragnet that does not ask if you have an accent before it shoots you. I feel like that sentence really kind of, you know, points out like pretty concretely that diversity there in that there are cultural differences and language differences, right? And yet, um, when it is not, when there are not, people are not attuning into, or whiteness is not attuning into the specificity of Blackness, it shows up as I just see a Black body. And
Yeah.
so.
So I really like this. And it like my page numbers are going to be different because I'm using the ebook. So,
Mhm.
but she talks about the term diversity and when she was at Emory,
Yes.
and she said it was full of lovely people. Oh, my cohort was also very white. It was full of lovely people, but save for 3 of the maybe 30 students I regularly engage with on campus, they were all white. But the university knows all the right things to do about diversity, a bullshit term invented by bureaucrats who stutter when they say Black. And um, well, in the modern university, a good liberal arts school believes in equal opportunity. It welcomes diversity. So, and then she goes on to say all these other
Mhm.
things. And so, in the question about basically how does she grapple with this like term, um, or the concept, the complexity of diversity. So I think she recognizes that it's what she just said, bullshit. And that I also know, like, she talks about her upbringing and who she grew up around and how that informed her idea of Blackness. And then she goes to a HBCU, right?
Mhm.
And that informs her idea of Blackness. And so I think she has like these so many different ideas of what Blackness can be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like grapples with this idea of what does it mean to be going back to that earlier black. Like what does that
Right.
even mean? Right?
Mhm.
Like what is it? Um, like is it am I black enough or not? Am I too black if I like speak in a particular way?
Right.
Right. And in certain settings you can speak in that way and it's fine. Right.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so I think she talks about it. She grapples with the term. But I also see like when I'm reading this, I think we like read the work of authors when it comes to nonfiction, and we think that they like have like gotten to a place of actualization and like they just know everything they're going to know.
Yes.
And when I'm reading her work, I'm seeing someone who is still grappling with
Trying
these
to work it
concepts.
out.
And
Mhm.
so that is what I like. I think she's still grappling with the idea of like, what does it mean to be black? And who can be black? And
Mhm.
am I black enough in this space?
Right. Yep.
Am I not?
Yeah. And
And
especially
so
in that moment, right, when, you know, um, I think when it opens up, right, black people are over, and like that sort of gut wrenching, like in defense of black, but then it's like, but then you see other examples in which like it's a very particular kind of black that's over, right? And it's her black that's kind of being, um, that's kind of being, pushed aside or feeling erased,
mhm.
or there's this erasure. Sorry, I keep trying to fix my part is on a different side of my head this time when I'm like trying to adjust it, and I usually pull it to the other side. So I'm just like struggling right now. So the next question is about class stratification. It's quite different in Black communities than white communities. And so, what are some other markers of social mobility that the chapter considers, and how do these markers show up in your daily life? Um, I think education is a big one, right? Like, and she reminds us that like class and social mobility is not about your your income or like your wealth, but it's also about class. I mean, it's about taste, right? So on page 140, she says there's not much money attached to doctoral studies, but social class is about more than money. It is about attitudes and culture and taste. So, um, and those things are sort of fortified through education and one's ability to kind of know about art or know about certain elements of high culture or high
Mhm.
theory or something.
Yeah.
So those are, you know,
And
uh,
I think she talks a lot about dialect as well. So like
mhm,
or accent and sort
mhm,
of erasing like how her mom, like paying for classes to change the way
mhm.
she speaks.
Yeah.
Um, and when she was describing that, I went back to because that's language, right? That's a
Mhm.
different type of thing. That's not just money. That's
Right.
language. And so you said education, also behavior. So I remember growing up, like, I forgive you, dad, but like he sent me to these like little etiquette classes.
Ooh, etiquette. Yes. Ooh,
Bruh,
child.
I don't need that, bruh. But
We
but
have,
he was
and
trying, and that was his thing, right? Like he
yeah.
thought that's what he thought. Like, and
Mhm.
I was the only black girl in here. And
I think,
so
yeah.
huh?
I think about that a lot. Like, I mean, even those programs like that, those after school programs where they're like for inner city, youth, but then they like giving you etiquette classes and trying to refine you and, so that you can be cultured or whatever. So
yeah, I'm already fine. I don't need to be refined. Okay. But yeah, like that's an example, like, and then I also was sent to private school, and it wasn't because of like I was sent to a Catholic, like basically Catholic school my entire life. And I was told it was not because of like any of the like moral or religious aspects of things. It was specifically to provide order.
Ooh.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah. So, and this is someone, I was raised by someone who was in the military. So that was he didn't know how to, I guess at that time, give order to a young girl. So he's like, well, I'm going to send you somewhere that they will be able to help. So it's just like that. It's behaviors too. It's mannerisms. It's how we dress. It's, the words that we speak, how we speak them. The place that our tongue falls, because she talks about that. So, and like when we're speaking certain words, but yeah. So I think those are some examples of social mobility or markers of social mobility. I think, oh no, we're not at the last question. So many questions. There, you was doing this, weren't you? You was taking all the questions, Dr. Walker. So the next question asks, how has the broader society defined what Blackness is and is not? Who is Black? And what is at stake in these set of questions? So I can talk about. So I feel like so broader society, I don't know if she's saying or asking us about society outside of academia, or if it's like just society at large, like, or outside of Black, like outside of the Black community and things like that. And I think it could be interpreted differently based on who we're talking about. But I don't know. Like I feel like there are a set of norms that we somehow are taught, and we learn these things over time. And just like we talked about the construction of whiteness, ideas of Blackness is also constructed. And it's always like which Black is right is always being transformed and modified. And yeah, so
yeah. And I think about like with that, like who does it benefit for Blackness to, move or be redefined or defined in different ways?
Yeah.
That's always, I think, the question that, when she says what is at stake in these sets of questions, I think what's at stake is do these things actually benefit Black folks? When we
or is it limiting who we are, who we can be? Someone said, yes, like how y'all mentioned taste and social mobility. Growing up, I was always told being ghetto was seen as lower class. So I'm assuming like ghetto mannerism, like whatever that, right? I don't know. These questions are, well, this is why I said this chapter was very significant for me or important, because these are things that like I always grapple with. In terms of like, do people see me as Black enough because of complexion or whatever? But then also like going into professional settings because I show up just like this and I speak just like this. And It's I don't know, like the code switching thing that we've talked about previously, it's kind of like a immersed experience. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you're gonna get all of it in one sitting. So
Mm-hmm.
like like and I see that as who I am. And I also
Right.
like I just said, I went to private school all my
Mm-hmm.
life, but I grew up in the inner city. Like my dad
Mm-hmm.
refused to move us from that space, but sent me to get an education
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else. And so for me, Blackness is this in between like thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's always discovering
Mm-hmm.
what it means to be who I am, not ghetto
Mm-hmm.
Gotti or however it's spelled, like a lot
Yeah,
of big
we knew what you was talking about.
flashy. Oh, okay. I didn't.
Oh, not ghetto, Gotti, or however it's spelled. Oh, gaudy,
Gaudy. Oh,
G-A-U-D-Y.
being Gaudy. Okay.
It was a
Yeah.
G-A-W, but gaudy. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Like, cause people used to be like, "That's you trying too hard." So if you gotta try that hard, then like you don't really got it like that. Cause
Right.
people who got it like that, they don't gotta try that hard.
Right. You don't even know. They be on with they basic,
They
clothes.
My
You like,
stepmother used to tell me all the time, like, you do know, like, wealthy people, they go to TJ Maxx and they go to
right.
Marshalls.
Mm-hmm.
You be trying to go
You be
to
trying to
wherever,
be up in Gucci,
and they getting their $20 jeans
Mm-hmm.
and saving their little coins. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I also feel like people like Black folks who get money, like they have earned privilege, right? Like they get a job and now they have all this money, or they play sports or they're in music or something like that. A lot of people call them Gotti, and
Mm-hmm.
it's because like, but my thing is like, who cares? Like, this is their stuff. If they can buy it, let them buy it. Lord, like, come on. Like,
Yeah. But
goodness.
I was even just down to like the concept of minimalism. So I was watching or listening to something, and like a lot of people said, like, people who grew up not having a lot may tend toward like maximalism or even hoarding, because there's this notion like, just in case I need this, I can't get rid of it, or I want to have enough because growing up I didn't have a lot. And like there's a lot of privilege in being able to say like I can detach from things, because if I ever need it again, I can just easily go out and buy it. So I thought that was I wish I knew where I heard or where I was listening to that, but it was really, that's also a part of that class thing. It's like when you see people who have a lot of stuff or a lot of clutter, it's kind of like, don't just assume that they don't really like have class. Like, I mean, it's like this sort of class thing. And it's like, well, you can kind of you can kind of let go of items a little bit quicker if it's easier to obtain them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's also, this is not about like items like that, but the same conversation has been had about hair. So I've heard a lot of white women say things like, well, it's just hair. You can cut it off and then start over again. It's like, nah, but my hair don't grow like that. Like, I
Right.
don't know. And it's not that simple.
Mm-hmm. And I
So,
mean, yeah, there's so much about, hair is just a whole nother thing. But yes,
yeah.
mm-hmm.
So, um,
How does scarcity or the narrative of scarcity shape the debate over who is Black, and what does it mean for such a conversation to take place in a social context of actual abundance, like higher education? Yeah, this is a good question about like, there is this notion. I think I talked about this a little earlier when we were talking about Obama, like this notion like we never gonna have this opportunity again, or like there's a lack of resources. And it's like, okay, if there is truly a lack of resources, then college presidents wouldn't be getting paid like
So
million
the
dollars.
concept of scarcity is just like the other the concept of whiteness. It's a construction.
Mhm.
Somebody
Right.
determines what's scarce.
Yeah. It's like we don't have
And
no money. And somebody brought this up even just like the other day. We had a meeting and somebody was like, we've been doing all these different things. We've been saying we can't have these different accessibility things. We can't change these different things to make our campus more accessible. But as soon as the pandemic hit, guess what? We found that money, or we took out whatever loan that was necessary because we felt like we had a good chance of paying it back. So we found the resources to make whatever we needed to make accessible during the pandemic because it was done out of necessity. But when things aren't seen as out of necessity, or there's like whatever, it's like, oh, we don't have no money for that.
mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know? So
And it's sort of like, because you construct this idea of scarcity, then it actually, like, something has to be created to uphold the idea. And so
right.
then when it comes to like Black folks within certain institutions, then it's like, well, we can only have one, you
Right.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
all 50,000 of y'all apply for this one position,
Right.
and
Yep.
we can only have one of y'all. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but then that then translates into how we treat each other within these spaces
Yep.
as well.
Yeah. And
So
so I mean, you think about opportunity hoarding as a white behavior, and I'm not even saying like that's necessarily, but it is often done by Black people, right? So like the idea that it can only be one person in a position of leadership, it forecloses and it blocks anybody else from being at the decision making table, because it's like I can't let anybody take on my position of power because I might lose it, or they might somehow think that like this, it's like it becomes this competition of like, well, what if they find out that this person is more competent than me, then they're going to replace me. And it's like there are 12 white people on this table. There are maybe two of you. Why do you think they are not competing to see who's going to be whatever? But somehow it's like we internalize this notion that it can only be one. And so there isn't,
yeah.
you know.
And to me, it's like a cycle. So like, again, like we have internalized it, but then those who are in positions to make decisions about the number of
Yeah. Yeah.
of Black
You're
folks in
right.
the space,
Mm-hmm.
then right, like they limit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, we don't want too many of y'all now.
Right. Because
You
y'all
know,
been
like, and
together.
so then it's like this cycle. We agree.
Yeah. And when those things happen, I think it's important. And I'm glad you said that, because I think when that happens, we often blame each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, somebody set this up that that only one, and that there's a competition. And so, it's hard not to be, angry at the person, or to believe that they are blocking, because in some ways they do, but in other ways it's like, but there's always somebody who made a decision to where even if that person was blocking, right, there's always somebody else who can make a different decision by virtue of their position, and they don't.
Yeah.
So it's like being mad at the wrong thing, right? Be mad at white supremacy. Don't be mad. Well, you can be mad at the individual, right? But
Well, and
don't,
because I mean, yeah, it's
but
a lot.
don't,
It's a lot.
yeah, don't settle, because it's like, it's about remembering that there's a system in place that's upheld by people, individuals. But stopping there, when we stop at the individual, we don't necessarily, I think, get to the root.
The root.
The root. Ooh, we got one more question, girl. We gonna get through it. Okay. Have you ever had to make a decision about yourself, about how much of yourself you present to the world every day? Every day. Even on these lives, I'd be like, I'm subtweeting right now, but it's it's okay. We're gonna see this.
Yeah, I think about that actually constantly. Like, I wonder if my university president is gonna log on somehow.
I have coworkers signed up, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even care. Y'all can be in the Dame book club. This is my safe space, and I'm not gonna let y'all run me up out of here. But yeah, I do think about it all the time about being critical of even my profession, because I think that scarcity politics does kind of come in where you're like, oh my God, is anybody gonna ever want me to serve in these kind of roles again? Or will I ever have another job? And it's like, if that's your main concern, like, you got to be, if your job is to be in a place where you're supposed to critique systems of power, even though it don't be coming out like that. I mean, in theory, you're supposed to. In practice, it don't always happen. But if you're afraid, there's a fundamental problem with that, being afraid to critique those systems. So I think
that, that goes back to what I mentioned before about like this, I guess, like my why or what's driving me. And once I realized that, like, I stopped caring about if somebody thinks I'm unprofessional or if they think I'm angry or if they, like, I know what my calling is and you ain't give me that calling.
Right.
Okay. So like, and my thing is like, particularly if we're talking about higher education and we're talking about like, even with her work, right? Her writing, it's specifically, she writes a lot about Black experiences and the experiences of Black women. And so that's already disrupting, the norm of who, like journalists who are writing about certain things and professors who are teaching about certain things. And in our position, like to be a Black woman in both of our positions, it's like a rare thing, like that's not a thing that happens often. And I feel like regardless, somebody's always going to say that we're doing something wrong. And so why not show up as your whole self?
Right.
Because you're going to find something wrong.
Right.
Unless you're adamantly not trying to find something wrong. So like, or you're just truly like a co-conspirator, not even an ally. Right. And so, but I think I personally decided to show up as my full self because, and now more than anybody, Denisha, but like, it was killing me. I can't like lying about who I am. And you brought up a good point. Like, so for those who don't know, like, I direct a women's center and teach in women, gender, and sexuality studies. And so like these spaces, these programs, and these centers were created out of activism and out of advocacy from the community and from students and from other women across campus. And so my thing is like, it was created to disrupt. And so how dare I not disrupt?
Right.
You hired me to disrupt the bull. So like, that's what I'm doing. And now you mad. Because I do my job well. You mad.
You do the job. I mean, we talked about this the last chat, like, that was what you meant. It was with a different type of job, but the same thing. It was like, that's what you wanted. That's what the job is. So
yeah,
don't be mad at me. So, but they get mad. And then, in comes the comfortable people. So
all right, y'all. I think we done with this chapter. That was the last one.
Yep. All right, y'all. Well, have a great day. Sorry for some of the awkwardness.
There was some strange texts that we're gonna have to take care of.
Some stranger things happening in the thing. They vigilant. They out here.
Yeah, they are. I don't know what was happening there, but
we should have had like a code for. I think I know why. We should have had a code word, a safe word for our friend 45. But yeah. So anyway. I bet you that's one of the words too. Damn it. But so anyway, y'all have a good night, and thank you for all of your very nice comments that were productive to the conversation. I hope you had a good time tonight.
And remember to check out The Price of Fabulousness, a conversation about that chapter, the last chapter from the book. And that is on the 30th, I believe.
Okay. I didn't know. Because I'm like, I'm supposed to be co-hosting that, but I don't even know what day that is. So I will go look on the calendar. And yeah, make sure you go by your syllabus. And right, we gotta, I'm not groomed in internet speed, so I don't know how to dodge, but go get your things, buy merch, all of that good stuff,
Yes. Alrighty.
Good night.
Bye, y'all.